Hello, everyone, and welcome to this round 3 of the match between Andrei Volikitin and Michael Adams, the England against Ukraine solidarity match, here with Grandmaster Peter Wells. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Natasha. Hello, everyone. Good to be back.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and this is the position as we are now. So Andrei's white, Mickey's black, and we've got a minor piece and queen endgame. So
yeah, with opposite coloured bishops as well. So, I mean, I was looking at the earlier part of the game and thinking, there were one or two moments where if white was super accurate, they may be able to squeeze a little bit. But to be honest, the whole thing looks, pretty solid for Mickey. Not terribly thrilling for the crowd, perhaps. Although we'll see. I mean, there were some moments at the beginning, but they had a symmetrical position on about move 16, and at that point, actually, I had a feeling that the symmetry, their symmetry might work in white's favour, as it sometimes does a little bit. But Volikitin didn't really get, as far as I could see, any significant chances. But we'll take a look. We'll see what we can make.
But Peter, it looks like Andrei's behind on the clock somewhat.
I think I think he was trying hard to get something out of it, but it was. I mean, it was incredibly difficult. I mean, even you look at it if you look at it with an engine, as I did at one point, just a little bit, I still got the feeling that even if you play engine moves, I never felt that black was in significant danger. Just possibly white. Sometimes the engine would suddenly say a small plus, and it wasn't even obvious why that was. I think basically it looks like Mickey's chosen an incredibly solid line and has handled it quite well. And it's you think, because Mickey lost yesterday with white in the first two games, you had the feeling that the players with the black pieces were basically performing incredibly well. I mean, to be fair, I think white got a slight edge out of both those openings, but only a very slight edge, and there was always sort of potential counterplay. And black, Mickey was clearly pressing in game one, which we saw a couple of days ago, and then, on Tuesday, and the game yesterday, Mickey was pressing a little bit until he went astray and lost the initiative quite significantly. So I think that, I think it's the most important thing for Mickey today was not to lose again. It's as simple as that. I think, people think, oh, you're something behind, you need to strike back. I still think, to most intents and purposes, when you have 6 games left, as it was this morning, you're looking to strike back with white. And the most important thing is not to lose consecutive games, because obviously if you lose with white in a match, that's a fairly major blow to, to your game plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's a relatively short match, isn't it, Peter? So you still got a lot of time left in this match, but it'll be over before we know it.
No, it is quite short, and it's particularly, I find that really interesting. An 8-game match is not. I mean, I'm trying to remember other 8-game matches. Actually, I can't think of many. I can think of a few 6-game matches and lots of 12-game matches, but 8-game matches, not so often. And of course, the other thing to say is the majority of people probably never get the chance to play a match.
Have you ever played a match, Peter?
I played a match when I was too young to appreciate it, I think. I played a match when I was 14 years old against an international master, and I think the hope was that I would create some headlines by being sort of 14-year-old beats international master, which was less common in those days than it is now. But
which international master was it?
Significantly failed to deliver. I failed to beat him, so there were no headlines anyway. So.
Oh, okay. So we've got another e4, e5 here. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, another Italian game. Bishop c5, castles, and knight f6. Were you surprised by this move, Peter? I think we might have lost Peter.
I thought you lost me. I thought I lost you.
There we go. There we go. You're back.
Did I disappear or did you? On my screen, you'd frozen, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Well, you disappeared for me.
Okay. I just kept talking because I thought I might not.
Hi, Blue Grey Haze. Okay. Yes. Yeah, so we got knight f6 on the board.
Okay. That's fine. Yeah, this is what we had the other day, and I gave what we didn't have the other day. Mickey went d6, didn't he, first time round instead of knight f6?
Yeah.
And
so he was mixing up. You said he played all sorts of things in this position. So
yeah, but I also mentioned this silly gambit with after knight f6 you can play d4.
Yeah.
And I do think it's possible that Mickey might have avoided that just the other day just because he hadn't looked at it. But once he knows that Volikitin's going to play this move order with 4 castles, then it moves from something which you're trying to avoid to something which you're probably trying to encourage. And I think it's something you want to play with black if you've prepared, but you might not want to if you haven't.
I think Mickey would like to see it. Yeah, I think
he'd like to see it now, but I think he might still have been avoiding it the other day because it's not probably a barrel of laughs to go into if you haven't looked at it at all or for ages or something.
Hi, Paspon. Okay, but Andrei didn't. He went.
No, I didn't really. I don't think he was ever going to. I just think that it's something that when you're black, you have to allow for it. If there's no downside to avoiding it, then first time round, it might be sensible to avoid it.
Yeah.
So, yep.
So both players. It's quite a quiet opening, I'd say.
It is a quiet opening, but it can. I mean, as it did the other day, it can really spring into life. And after c3, we're back at the position we had on Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is where Mickey played a5 the other day, and then a very early bishop a7. And I think you talked about putting the bishop on b6, didn't you? Which is the plan he went for here. So this time
he was probably watching our commentary.
Wow, that must be it.
The game. He probably watched it back and thought that was a good idea.
I'm sure the influence we have on his opening prep is barely explored yet, really.
I think he's barely explored our influence on his opening.
I'm sure that's also true.
So castles.
Right.
Fun. Okay. So yeah, so rookie 1, and we were talking about also before if bishop e3 happens, because that's what happened in the white game the other day.
Yeah.
And we had an exchange. So Mickey's dropped back already to b6. And then h3.
I mean, one of the things with if white doesn't play some a-pawn move, then one possibility with bishop b6 is that you're kind of gaining a tempo over going a6 and bishop a7. If you're happy to have the bishop on b6, then you've avoided having to make a move with the a-pawn until white does. And meanwhile, if you can play sort of knight e7 as Mickey does here, then the bishop can also be relocated to c7 sometimes. The problem for the crowd is, as we'll see in a minute, this can very easily become symmetrical or thereabouts.
Yeah. And Mickey played h6.
Yeah.
Knight bd2 and knight e7.
I mean, the way we saw the other day, black can play something like bishop e6 in this position again and would be not unhappy with something where the pawns on the e-file were doubled if he gets the f-file in return and controls some white squares in the center. But knight e7 is also a very popular line, but you can see when white goes knight f1 to g3 and black goes knight g6, the differences between the two sides' positions are less marked than they were in those lines we had the other day with a5, knight a3 and stuff.
Because the game the other day did actually generate quite a lot of play, didn't it?
It was a fantastic game one. Yeah.
So a4 and a5 by Mickey.
Yeah. Again, Mickey. I think Mickey is again declaring a preference for sort of clamping out these space gains which white can make by playing a5 or b4, that kind of thing. He seems to be, although he's gone for the bishop b6, he's gone for a slightly different line, but the same philosophy. When white goes a4, he wants to stop the a-pawn from, and he wants to stop that a-pawn from advancing, even if his future plan might be to deploy the bishop, possibly to the other diagonal on the case. So the bishop's keeping its options open.
Yeah. So you're talking about like pushing.
He might end up going c6 and bishop c7 if he wants to support the e5 pawn, for example.
Yeah.
Either side could end up with their bishop on that diagonal as well.
Yes.
So.
Okay, and bishop b3. So it is getting quite symmetrical, only really the knight's doing different stuff.
Yeah.
Because Mickey plays c6 as well.
Yeah, exactly. And, with the main pawn break for either side is to play either d4 for white or d5 for black. That's the kind of principal thing that they have their eye on, I think.
But hang on, right? We get knight f1 and then knight g6.
Yeah.
Hasn't like black gained a move then?
White has rook e1.
Rook e1, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, rook e1's the extra move, but I mean, it's it depends on what happens next, how useful a move rook e1 is, and that's because White's extra move is rook e1. Black actually gets this chance to break first in the center if he wants it in a moment. So after knight g3, this is a completely symmetrical position apart from rook, being on e1. Yeah, so that is the extra move White
Black
has.
rook's there, white rook's there, and everything else is symmetrical.
And I suspect that if black goes rook e8, making it totally symmetrical, that white will probably do what black did and go for the d4 break at that point. Again, with as I said the other day, when you have a5 and a4 on the board, there's a slight downside whenever you take back with the pawn on d4 that the b4 square will be weak, or for black the d5. Yeah. So it may well be they're taking back with the knight.
Right. So we're talking about lines with d5.
We're talking about d5 and knight takes. Makes a lot of sense, I think. Yeah. Keeps the structure quite solid.
Yeah. So Mickey did go ahead and play d5. Yeah. And so we have takes.
And by the way, in this position, I think if black doesn't have the option of playing pawn takes because e5 could be captured. Whereas I assume that's true. I haven't checked, but I don't see any reason why you can't take here. Whereas after knight takes, there's a fairly familiar trick. After knight takes d5, there's a fairly familiar trick that if white takes, black takes on e5, and then has a very annoying bishop takes f2 check with the rook.
Ooh.
Rook hanging in the middle of the board. You don't want to fall for that sort of thing.
So here.
And queen f6. Picks up the rook.
Ooh, that's a nice one.
Yeah, that's pretty much as bad as it looks.
That looks pretty awful.
Yeah, there's no upside to that.
No, you don't do that. Fine. Okay. So, but both players know this trick, of course.
Both players have seen this trick a few times. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So, so I suppose that. I mean, one of the interesting things in this line, it feels to me like you know how in d4, d5 openings, it's usually the bishop on c8, which turns out to be the problem for players developing. It seems to me that in this line, there's a sense in which the c1 and c8 bishops are both, they have similar problems to each other, but developing that piece successfully feels like it's going to be not a very easy task because most of its squares are covered.
All right, so I'm gonna then say what Mickey could very easily just put it on e6. Oh,
well,
could he?
To be fair, okay, it's White's move, and I was thinking more. Okay, I think when White goes d4, then we're going to see a position where that becomes very, very difficult. But I think if you did put it on e6, then I would take that as a cue to go d4 and knight takes anyway, and hopefully gain a tempo by kicking it.
Yes.
Although it is possible you could let me take it on e6 and rely on the weakness of the the f file and the bishop on b6 again. But I'm a little bit skeptical about that.
And
that feels slightly, feels slightly awkward about putting a piece on such a loose square, even if the tactics work for the moment. But anyway, d4 makes sense. I don't think White has any way of increasing the pressure on the e5 pawn and trying to, in some positions you're always nervous to go d5 because the e5 pawn is going to be weak. But I think here it can be managed very easily. Although Black can never play f6, I think, because White would. Before d4 happened. If White managed to find some sensible waiting move, Black does have to find another way to defend e5 because f6 will lose to c4 and c5 check, I think.
You don't want to play
another nice little trick to be aware of. But I'm not even sure what White's sensible waiting move would be. So,
waiting move for White. Yes.
I mean,
you want to develop your queen, don't you? I mean.
But where do you go? Because you don't want to go to a square where you're going to get hit by knight f4. So, and you don't really want to go to a square where you're going to restrict the b3 bishop from possibly coming back to c2. So,
fair enough. Well, maybe that's why he goes d4.
I think to understand d4, the best way to do it is to look for other moves and see how difficult it is to actually make a sensible improving move. I mean, a move with the f3 knight occurs in some, Spanish type positions like this, but you look at that and you realize what you're trying to do is pressure the e5 pawn. If you move the f3 knight, you're doing the opposite. So it sort of
if we move it's finished. It's all over.
It's all over.
Yeah.
Yep.
If we move here, move this other knight.
Yeah.
Knight to e4, perhaps. Is that just that they might? They're not going to go f5.
Then black certainly starts looking at the possibility of f5. Yeah, I mean, you may not even be threatening to take the knight immediately, because if you do, I'll have a pin with d takes e4, winning the piece back. But I don't think. I mean, black probably play king somewhere and a well-timed f5. I mean, it's possible, but I'm not even. Whenever you play a knight move like that, it's not a bad question to ask where's it headed, and I'm not quite sure where it's headed. Really.
No, I was really just trying to think of a different move.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, I think d4 makes a lot of sense, and actually, they can lead to sterile equality when you remove all the pawns in the center, but sometimes it just leads to positions where all the onus is on the pieces to do their thing, and it's much less about pawn structure in the center, because there isn't one, and it's all about piece activity. So when you get rid of all these pawns, it can be quite fun, but it may not be.
Okay.
But, the fact that all the pawns in the center get removed doesn't in itself mean it's going to be.
It's going to be an open game, but is it going to be a crazy open game or a sensible open game?
Well, it's actually, I think it's about to clarify quite quickly. I think if black. I mean, it looks here like black ought to have quite a range of moves which don't make any structural concessions. Black played rook e8, which allows white to modify the structure immediately.
Blue Grey Haze raises a question, but they've got a really good prize fund actually for this match.
They do have a pretty healthy prize fund.
Yeah, really, really great. Do you think they're going to be a bit nervous about their openings because of that? I'm not sure whether they will.
I think it's a bit hard to say. I mean, I don't think someone like Mickey isn't in the position of many professionals. The guy gets reasonably well paid when he turns out for a tournament. I don't think there's even a healthy prize fund like this clearly isn't life-changing.
So he'll be motivated to do as well as he can in the match.
Oh gosh, I mean, there's no doubt about that. A prize fund like this is certainly going to motivate the players to, and it's going to. But yeah, of course, there's different possibilities. I mean, you've seen in World Championship matches with the largest prize funds of all that they don't reliably lead to a whole bunch of exciting games. So I understand the question. I think there can be a kind of maybe you have an optimal prize fund which leads to more creativity and a bit of risk taking without leading people to be so nervous that they go in the opposite direction. There probably is an optimum, isn't there?
Yeah, but also maybe it's different in a match and a tournament situation, because like say you're in an open tournament and then you had a large prize fund, then you're going to have to take extra risks, aren't you? Because if only one player out of a lot of players is going to win the top prize, then you're going to have to kind of not have so many draws.
Absolutely.
In a match, it's a different dynamic. So you don't want to just give away the whole match by taking unnecessary risks.
Yeah, no, it's gonna. I think it is quite tricky. But I mean, I think that somebody like Mickey always struck me as very objective. He struck me that he usually tries to play what he thinks is the best move, and probably actually alters that for kind of result-based reasons like risk-taking and that sort of thing, less than some other people do. I've seen him take quite objective decisions against significantly weaker players, where some people would gamble much more.
Yeah.
I think he likes his play to be correct. I think that's quite important to him.
Well, yeah, but correct does depend on the... It depends on the... I'm going to be a bit... talk mathematics here, but it depends on the objective, right? So correct for a... Correct play is different depending on whether you're in a match or a tournament, because you're looking to maximize your chance of winning, perhaps.
Yeah, correct relative to a goal like that, but I meant correct more in the sense of, we'll try on the whole to play the moves. Perhaps on occasions I used to think even more than maybe he should, that the moves that the engine would recommend, the moves which are objectively the best.
Because
but then some other people obviously try and adapt their style to the kind of sporting ambition, as they used to say.
Because I play also play bridge. Well, I used to play bridge, and so Andrew Robson's one of the England's top bridge players, and he ran this course so you can play match play or duplicate play, which is like a competition with lots of pairs in the evening.
Right.
And he ran a course on how to play if you're playing in a duplicate competition. So they used to just have different training depending on the format of the competition, even though you're still playing kind of bridge.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I understand. I mean, I understand that but nonetheless, so would you say that if you have different aims, there is in a sense not even an objectively best move? I've tended to formulate
So the engine top move would not.
There's an objectively best move, but you might try to modify that if you had different aims. Like the best move may be the best move for the purpose may be the one that puts the most pressure on the opponent or sets the most unusual problems. That kind of thing. Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. I think Mickey, on the whole, has tended to try to play what he thinks are objectively the best moves, even if on occasions I used to think that he might have scored better by, for example, testing weaker players, actually giving weaker players less credit. In a sense, he used to show his opponents quite a lot of respect, I think, which is kind of nice. But on the other hand, I think he's modified that over the years. I think he has actually become a little bit more practical and slightly less subjective in that sense. And doing whichever, he's been sort of incredibly successful. So it's not a criticism, but I did notice it at times. I thought Mickey was kind of believing his opponent slightly more than some other people would have done.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah. Okay, so rook e8. So this black's basically inviting white to create a structural weakness at the expense of the bishop pair if he wants to. And I don't think it's necessary. I think a move like bishop c7 instead would have been quite viable.
You're talking about the move bishop takes d5.
Yeah, well, rook takes e8 and then bishop takes d5. Because if you take immediately, I don't know. I suspect that if white took on d5 first, black could actually take on e1 and allow a queen e8 check. That's worth seeing, actually, because
I'll go back.
Yeah, sorry.
So
I hadn't looked, but I kind of assumed that after bishop takes d5, if you play rook takes e1, because it kind of otherwise you might. If black had to play pawn takes here, you'd probably do this because it's nice to have the file. But I think black can play queen takes, queen e8 check, I guess king h7, and then black is threatening a discovered attack with bishop takes h3, I think.
Yeah, so is there a move for white in this position?
Yeah, I mean, there will be moves, but you haven't got your structural weakness now, so it needs to be a move that.
Right, so bishop h3 threatens mate. So
bishop h3 threatens mate, so the fact that it's pinned against the rook doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I don't think white has a convenient, and white has moves that probably stop that, but I doubt if white has a really convenient one, because black's also kind of threatening to take on d4, probably positionally. Yeah. And yeah, whatever move white has here needs to be pretty good.
So say you went there or something, but
well, that doesn't cover bishop h3. So yeah, that's definitely. Then white has to play queen e4 and grovel.
Queen e4 and swap off, and you're pawn down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That won't be much fun. So I think that's why white has to take on e8 first. So when Mickey allows this isolated d pawn, part of the calculation is that he gets the bishop pair and the e file for the moment. So it's a fairly major decision for white, but I think it's the way when you're playing for a win with white, this is the thing you try in the position, I think.
Yeah.
And I like Mickey's next move because I think the important thing about positions like this is that if the dark squared bishops get exchanged, as we said before, if the bishop pair is an important thing, if it's no longer the bishop pair, if it's just like one bishop against a knight, then I think black's, particularly as the c8 bishop is arguably a slightly bad bishop with the pawn on d5, black's going to suffer in those positions. I mean,
yeah, this looks
maybe
good.
Black can draw, but it makes a lot of sense to keep the bishop pair, and knight, and also black's threatening to win a piece now because the f pawn is overworked.
Indeed, so the threat.
Yeah,
yeah, and then take on e3 with the queen.
So that's kind of important. So white can't play something like knight b5, so has to deal with the threat first.
Okay, and so Andrei comes up with queen d3, just defending that bishop. He doesn't mind if Mickey takes, using that lovely bishop of his on g3.
Well, that's right. And then, if he does take, then you get, and he did take.
And actually he does.
Yeah, he did. And I mean, what you get then, I mean, I wasn't necessarily expecting black to take.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't expect black to take. I really like that bishop on c7.
Yeah, I quite like that bishop too, but it may be that it's actually the simplest solution for, if you're trying to equalize it, maybe the simplest solution. I mean, the other thing, the pawn on a4 is going to need defending. That's another advantage of having black's queen on e8. In a minute, when you go bishop d7, that pawn will probably need defending.
So what if Mickey just goes bishop d7 and doesn't worry with
it? Okay. Well, now I might go knight b5, I guess, because I'm hitting the bishop. And
okay.
I mean, yeah, you can take on b5, but I think I'm happy enough to take with the a pawn. I don't think that's something that worries me. And I think you can play bishop takes g3 here, but I sort of, maybe not both of them at once. If you do both of them,
that's not so bad, is it?
For black.
Yeah.
Well, I think the problem you have here is that the a5 pawn might become a bit weak as well.
Okay.
I guess that's part of the argument. I mean, I don't think any of it's terrible, but I think that's not the. I don't think giving up all the bishops feels like the way for black to go. So, I mean, the other thing, I guess that after bishop d7, white could also just play b3 and try and play rook e1 and show that, the queen on the e file has pluses and minuses because it is liable to give white a tempo for kind of activating his pieces at some point as well. I think it's all fairly marginal stuff. I think black's trying to be equal and what he's fearing is being slightly worse. I don't think it gets, in most lines, much more drastic than that.
Yeah. I'm trying to bring these black pieces in, but it's...
Yes, I mean, I think it's
scary, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it's worth giving one line maybe. Just before we went knight, bishop d7 or bishop takes g3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because one thing worth thinking about is whether black can immediately bring the knight to c4, for example. That sort of...
Okay, so what, knight e5?
Yeah, try and hit the queen and just improve that. And I'm trying to think where the queen should best go.
Yeah. I was looking at e2, but actually maybe c2. Oh, no, because then the bishop's on.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, we don't have the bishop's not on immediately, but it will be in a minute, I guess. Yeah.
Because you'd have to, right, so say you went there and they went in there, you'd have to drop all the way back if you wanted to keep that bishop.
Yes. It's possible. I mean,
oh, you'd go rook e1, I suppose.
Well, then black could take on g3 and e3, and when you go to pin the knight, grab the pawn on a4. It's a bit not entirely sure at first glance how that would be. So g3 first, yeah. e3, just to try and win the a4 pawn. But this may be a way of creating trouble for yourself, because when black's a little undeveloped and decentralized, that's when white can sometimes make some chances. But it's not... Yeah, so queen f2 maybe. And then if queen a4, I just want to take on rook takes e3 and hope that I'm coming with some rook d7 before you get time. Rook e7, sorry, before you get time to develop. Is that
right?
It's possible, isn't it? I mean, you can feel as soon as you get that dark squared bishop being exchanged and the knight being exchanged, then it clarifies that white's a little better on the dark squares because we have a knight and you don't.
Yeah.
And a sort of,
Yeah, and this bishop doesn't have anywhere. So
I mean, the queen does defend the queen defends the bishop, but we could go bishop d7, rook e7, rook f8.
Okay,
and
so black's got
the queen can't be deflected with b3 because there's queen a1 check. So
right,
maybe this is viable, but it still feels like black could be under a little bit of pressure. I don't know. I think these feel like the sort of positions where
you melt like butter.
Feels to me like these kind of positions, the engine likes the activity more than we're used to.
More than the pawn.
Yeah, possibly. At least more than we're used to sort of give the activity credit for. That's why I think that's one of the reasons. I mean, you guys discovered this with AlphaZero, yeah? All kinds of positions where it likes the activity rather than the pawn, and it kind of it should make these kind of. Well, I think it makes lots of pawn sacks that humans would have barely considered, right? I think this is certainly compensation, and probably Mickey, if he's trying to make sure he doesn't lose a game, is well advised to avoid this.
No, he wouldn't want to play this sort of stuff. I don't.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. So Mickey took off straight away.
Yeah.
Bishop takes g3 and takes, and then developed his bishop here.
Yeah.
So that immediately hits this a4 pawn.
Yes.
And we do get b3. Right. So we were looking at kind of knight here into c4, but now this pawn's there.
Yeah, now that the pawn... I mean, these moves b3, h3, and one day even maybe g4, they do some sort of... You can see scenarios where black's minor pieces have been quite well restricted by them. And I guess if you want to look for why white might have a tiny edge, one of the reasons might be that a4 is quite easy to guard, whereas with white's bishop on this e3 to b6 diagonal with the knight on d4 rather than a pawn, potentially that pawn can be hit in a way that b3 can't.
Right, because we don't, as black, want to play b6 so much.
We don't want desperately to play b6, no, because that will be hit. But on the other hand, until b6 is possible, the a pawn's a little bit more of a target, I guess. So you can sort of see why white might be a little better. And I think the double g pawns are not anything white's going to lose any sleep over. But
yeah, because you can tuck your king in just here, and it's
that's right. They can even be quite nice for king safety. And don't forget, opposite color bishops, king safety should be quite high on the agenda, because if anyone starts direct attack on the king, then the opposite color bishops are really helpful. So, but I think the chances of it exploding into that sort of thing were not that great. And as we'll see, it sort of fizzles a bit.
Okay, let's see it fizzling. Queen e5.
You really sold that. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so it's tucking the g3 pawn.
Yeah.
So you might now go king h2.
You might. Yeah, I doubt if that's a significant difference. But you can see why you might want to go bishop f2 to threaten rook e1.
Rook e1, yeah, true. So bishop f2. And
threat is a bit strong, but it's clearly nice to take the file if you can.
Yeah. Okay, so now can rook e1 be played? The answer is yes, because it was played.
Yes.
And
okay, and black
back, and then we see.
I think black wants to take with the queen. So if you want to take with the queen, you have to go to b8. I don't think taking with the bishop isn't a disaster, but it might give white, for example, the move knight f5, which taking with the queen doesn't. So
yeah. Okay.
And now. What happened here?
Knight b5.
Knight b5. Okay, that sort of makes sense.
Yep. Queen e5.
Yeah, I couldn't see a lot wrong with bishop c6 either, but queen e5 has a sort of kind of active feel to it, I guess.
King h2.
As you were saying, that's a nice square to tuck your king on, although is it the right moment to do it when the g pawn's pinned? I mean, I don't think, again, it's a huge thing. But if you could play kind of g4, bishop g3, and king h2, wouldn't you kind of do that?
I'm sort of tempted as black to play h5, h4.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. But I mean, one thing I can do, having defended g3, is go kind of bishop. No, maybe not. Not so easy.
All right, I'm going to put it on the board then. That's what I would
put on the board.
Yeah, that would be my move.
Yeah, it's not so obvious to me why that's not a decent idea. So bishop d4, you're just going to go back to b8, aren't you, and stay on the diagonal?
Let's try it, yeah.
You know, I want to target squares that you can't defend with your bishop, but I can't see how I'm going to get at any, really. You know, g7 is the square I want to target, but I can't get near that.
I bet you do, but...
I do, but I don't think... Yeah, I mean, I think this is also possible.
I suppose you could target the a5 point. You know, like this or something, right? If you don't worry about the attack, which you maybe do worry about the attack, but if you don't, you could maybe like go there and then you're forking those two.
Yeah, I might query. Well, I do at least have to worry about it to the extent of not taking on d5. But yeah, I mean, maybe if I play h4, you can take on a5. Is that a bit cheeky?
Yeah. Say white just ignores. So here.
Yeah.
And then just take.
Yeah.
Because if you do take on there, we just take everything off, and that's...
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I think that's not... I mean, yes, this is probably... I mean, I'd be surprised if h5, h4 is really going to cause white enough problems that you can sack a pawn for it. But
yeah,
but, I mean, you know, it's possible. But I think black's probably well advised to keep super solid. And
fair enough.
But yeah, I would also be tempted by that sort of move as well.
Yeah.
But that might be why positions like this are not entirely for us.
that's probably true. I'd want to be playing it in a blitz game.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But okay, Mickey doesn't do that. He's too mature for that sort of thing.
He is, yes. I like knight e7 actually. It's sort of because, well, it gives you the option of going to c6 if you really need to defend the a5 pawn, and it gives you the option of going to f5, which looks to me like a sensible. Mind you, f5 feels a little bit like one of those squares that both minor pieces want, doesn't it? But
that's true.
But it improves the knight. I mean, the knight, unless the knight was, given that we've established that the e5 route wasn't that promising, the e7 route does look quite sensible.
Yeah, and it defends that d5 pawn. So if white
exactly.
does
also kind of frees up the queen.
Yeah,
frees up the queen for your h5 idea.
Yeah. I'm still hoping for this h5 idea, which obviously isn't going to happen, but I still want to see it.
Yep.
Okay, bishop d4. That's a sensible centralizing move.
Although it does potentially run into knight f5, I guess.
That's coming soon.
Yeah. Queen e6. That's interesting. So yeah, maybe the whole queen b8 idea was a little bit. Again, this might be more grown up, I suppose.
It's more central.
Well, yeah, I wonder though. Queen b8. What is white actually going to be able to
queen
use?
b8. Yeah. Let's see it. Queen b8. There we go.
Well, because it does mix well with knight f5, doesn't it? And given that white's next move was g4, we're at least entitled to ask the question. And bishop a7 loses a piece to bishop takes b5, I think, in most of these situations.
Bishop a7 loses to bishop takes b5. Oh, clever. Okay, so you're saying, yeah. So bishop a7 attacking this queen, bishop b5 attacking this queen. Fair enough. Yeah. Why not?
Well, why not? I'm looking at whether queen e3 is possible then, but I think that's when knight f5 comes into its own. I'm not sure though. Actually, is that bishop a7, bishop b5, queen e3 might actually.
So bishop a7 right here, you mean?
Yeah. Bishop takes b5, queen e3. It looks ridiculous, but I just wonder whether it actually, if it works for white, then there may be some senses in which it is quite attractive.
And you're talking about knight f5 straight away.
Well, knight f5, white has the option of taking on b8 and then taking him back on b5 and reaching a bishop v knight ending.
Bishop v knight, and you might.
It might be okay if we can, attack the b pawn quickly or something. But
yeah. Okay, so you'd have to really move the queen, wouldn't you?
I'm just trying to make this very dry position into a tactical tussle suddenly, but it's not really happening.
Yeah, it's tactical now. But okay, but then you just have to move this queen to defend the knight, I think.
Yeah, and then we'll take on b5, and then I think I would claim to be slightly better. I think maybe bishop a7 turned out to be a good trap.
Yeah. Okay, so bishop a7, we think. So here, there. And then we can put the knight in.
Yeah, no, this might be fine. After queen d6, I could also look at bishop c5 if I'm trying to continue to be awkward. But
you're being flash. Okay, so
I wasn't meaning to be flash. We haven't taken the bishop yet in that case.
All right, okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
So it would have to be like that.
I don't think any of this is really getting anywhere. I was just trying to point out that we weren't actually losing because of our blunder. We were very lucky and we're still okay.
Yeah. I don't believe you, but maybe it's okay.
You don't believe me? That's not
no. Okay.
Yeah, fair enough.
Fair enough. No, so queen b8 was possible, though, we think.
Oh, perhaps. Yeah. It's not. Yeah.
Okay.
It feels to me slightly more natural. I mean, I used to think that on the whole, if you've exchanged off one of your bishops, you should put your queen on the opposite colour from the other bishop. I once tried to pretend that was a principle, but I mean, it's sort of true.
No, I've heard that principle before. Yeah.
Yeah, but at one point I thought I'd invented it, but it probably exists. But I also don't think it's very convincing. But I think it's more often true than untrue. So.
Okay,
it's about the most.
Right, but if they're opposite bishops. So so white would put it on a white square. White's already on a white square.
Yeah, white's on a white square. White's following the rules. It's just queen e6 that doesn't obey the rules. But okay, I think queen e6 is perfectly fine as well. I was slightly surprised when I saw queen e6. It didn't feel like the most natural square, but probably because I was, enticed by this slightly false rule. Well, I think Mickey has a very specific idea in mind against g4, and it's probably a very accurate assessment of the thing.
I was just thinking, right? What about because I wouldn't mind bringing the bishop around like that.
Yeah, no, indeed. But if we go knight f5, are you going to be able to bring it in?
So say I went there and you went
I don't want to
knight f5 now, like that, yeah? Yeah. No, but then you're not mating me here, so I'm going to just go here again and try and take your a pawn.
Do you know what, Natasha? I'm planning to play an improved version of your h5 idea at some point.
You're going to go h5 now.
I'm not sure now.
You're taking the pawn and you'll be doing
you have bishop c7 and d5.
No, but the thing is, I can always block it, with bishop c7.
Oh, wait, but bishop c7, I still have my bishop takes b5 idea. So, yes, I'm going to go h5. I'm going to hit you with your own idea.
Ooh, h5. Okay. Yeah, all right. No, but I'm going to...
By the way, there could be knight c7 trying to show that d5 really is a bit weak.
Yeah. Or... Oh, no, not that. I'm not going to do that. So if I go bishop c7, you're planning that one, bishop b5.
Yes.
And if I recapture, you capture, I capture on f5.
Then I'm going to play the long-awaited h4. And assume that all is well. By the way, I could also take on c3, I think, after which I'm reasonably sure all will be well.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, all right, knight c7.
Yeah. But now, even bishop e6, I'm not sure that if you take on e6, that's such a bad minor piece trade for black. I mean, it's slightly odd when you're playing for a draw, or if you're comfortable with a draw, you're trying to first and foremost trying to equalize. It feels slightly odd to do something where you...
I don't have to do that, though. If you go there...
Yeah, you don't have to take. You
I
could also...
take on,
oh, wait a minute. You might be able to take...
B6? Or D5.
B6.
Let's say A5.
Yeah, D5 I was wondering about, but B6 now?
B6. So then I take on E6.
And then I take back.
And then I move my bishop.
And now I hit you with the strongest H4 we've had
so far. No!
You're succumbing to your own plan, Natasha.
This one is...
This is actually one I would probably...
So we've actually shown it can work.
The first position I've seen all day where I would choose black, I think. Okay. I would actually positively go out of my way to be black here, I think.
All right, fine.
But yeah, no, knight takes d5 in the middle of that might be. Okay, we should go back to Mickey's queen e6 because I think it's perfectly decent. And I think what he shows is that he's calculated well that g4 is not dangerous here.
Yes.
And, it may be that if g4 is not dangerous, that's the only strong argument for queen b8. And there's an argument in general to keep your pieces in the center as well. So
g4 then.
I mean, the problem with queen b8 is probably just that white takes the e-file, right? Although I couldn't see how to do that without changing queens. But it may be that queen e3, knight f5, queen e5 is slightly better for white as well. I think queen e6 is probably very sensible.
Mm.
But I do quite like that rule about keeping your queen on the opposite colour from your bishop. There are obviously exceptions. Does white have to go g4 now? I understand that it sort of feels like a space-gaining move, but...
Yeah, because what if you... okay, let me just think. So... what else are we doing, though, as white?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean...
because if we just swap queens or something, then it's nothing much, right?
I assume so. I kind of thought that white is generally keeping queens on if they're playing to win.
Yeah. So we could bring the queen, maybe queen across to f3.
Okay.
Threat of knight c7 and take... oh, it doesn't even work, really.
I'm not sure even.
So queen f3, just moving.
Yeah, and I mean, you can sort of half dangle the idea of queen f4, I suppose, and trying to infiltrate that way.
Yeah.
Maybe threatening queen b8, queen c7, those kind of things. I was assuming knight c6 might be a good reply to queen f4, but there is at least knight c7 to look at where the queen needs to defend the d-pawn somehow. But yeah, it doesn't look... none of it looks very scary for black to me.
Okay.
Okay, so...
perhaps g4's g4's the attempt.
g4 feels very... I mean, g4 makes sense in that if it were now white to move and could play queen g3, that feels like for the first time for a few moves, like white might be getting somewhere more significant.
Yeah.
Then could be threatening sort of knight c7 and queen e5, something like that. That looks...
oh, yeah, you'd want to get your queen on e5.
Yeah, that looks like real pressure.
Really nice, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could just play queen g3, I think white would have something to be excited about, which is why Mickey's next move is incredibly important. And I think it's... I mean, I was sure it was a good move when he played it, but I also kind of, in general, you feel a bit nervous when you have opposite coloured bishops and you're removing one of the potential obstacles to the bishop attacking a square like g7. It feels a little bit nerve-wracking because on the whole, those kind of... that's where the opposite colour bishops come into their own when they have those kind of attacks. But I think this one is absolutely fine.
True, isn't it? Because that opens the G file.
It opens the G file and it removes the potential of playing f6 to block the bishop attacking g7. So I don't think it's something you do without thinking about it. But in this position, I think Mickey's got the activity of the knight and the impact on, if the knight's attacking the bishop on d4, then those kind of arguments I just put have less weight. And I think he just judged this very, very well.
Yeah. So f5. Takes.
Yep.
And knight takes.
Yes.
Okay. And So Mickey's threatening, he could liquidate all the minor pieces now if white leaves them there.
Yeah, and if he did, I mean, if he played, let's say it was his move and he played bishop takes b5 and knight takes d4, is there no way to make that a little bit awkward still for black?
There's not really a way. We could do a waiting move by something like just move the queen back to d1.
Yeah, just for the sake of letting us do it. Let's see that.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be that black can throw in a queen d6 check as well or something. But
yeah. So takes.
By the way, it's quite possible that black could make the exchange on b5 and then try to perhaps play with the queen and knight. Although, if you excuse me, if you've read John Watson's stuff, you know that the much vaunted queen and knight combination is supposed to be statistically a bit overrated. So.
Is that true? That it's not.
Well, that's what John Watson was claiming, that in his statistical analysis, queen and bishop fared perfectly okay, actually.
That's interesting.
Yeah. That's secrets of modern chess strategy.
You might go queen d6 here.
Yeah, king g1. I couldn't work out whether it helped or not very much.
Right. Yeah.
I'll tell you what you could do here, possibly, is play a move like queen d7 to just hit the b pawn. Oh. And then if the queen defends the b pawn, you can show that the b pawn is overworked, or that the queen's overworked by then taking on d4 and messing up the structure.
I suppose you can.
That looks like a move, doesn't it? Okay, white could play b6, but that feels positionally a bit odd. I would go queen b5 or something and just try and have a new diagonal, new ideas.
This now looks quite fun.
Well, it feels like black has a little bit the white squares, which mind you, after bishop f2, I might be wrong. It may be white still. I have no idea. Again, this is the sort of thing where you can feel like that. No, if we could take that, I'd be happy. No, I mean, this could possibly rebound on black. It's maybe I've been too ambitious.
You want to get this one. You want to get this one round to here.
Yeah, but then there's bishop d4 and queen d4, and suddenly what we did to g7 might matter again. So, it's
got to be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, interesting. I'm not sure, but I don't think black needs to be in a rush to try to make exchanges. But yeah, I can see why white might want to do something about it. So
queen e5. So it went. So after knight takes f5, white dropped the bishop back actually, and queen e5 check.
Yep.
King g1.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mickey just got away from the checks. Quiet move, king into the corner.
I think Mickey's very good at those kind of things. Very good at judging when is a good moment to take a timeout for a move like that and just slightly improve. Because, it doesn't even need to have some grand argument. It's just that you were analysing some variations where the fact that queen takes d5 is check might matter. I think that's enough of an incentive somehow.
Yeah.
I mean, it does look very level now.
Yes.
It's difficult for me to imagine that black is in serious trouble. And actually, when Mickey plays a move like king h8, that's a pretty good cue. That
actually, knight d4, he just went back.
Okay. Well, queen takes d5 is less of an issue if the knight's in the way. Yes.
Indeed. Peter, did you? Hi, Ocelot. Did you rate that book very highly?
I think I described it in an interview as my favourite book ever. Chess book, that is. I think I described it as my number one chess book. It's certainly very, very high on my list. Yeah, I think it's a wonderful book.
When was it written, Peter?
2000, 1999, something like that. It's sort of 20 and a bit years old, I think.
Yeah.
And it's sad that it feels quite contemporary to me. It's just a sign of old age. But yeah, no, I think it's a wonderful book.
Yeah, and I just bought Mickey's book as well.
Okay.
But I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But everyone says it's really wonderful.
Yes.
Okay.
I must admit I haven't read it myself yet either.
No. Well, that's yeah. I carried it in my bag to work, but then I was playing on my phone instead, which in one of the awful ways one does these days.
Well, if you investigated very hard, you'd probably find one or two of these books behind me that I haven't entirely read either.
Oh, good grief. You've got a lot of books behind you there, Peter.
I've got a lot. I've got an impressive
Are they
array of
all
books.
chess? They don't.
If I read some of them, I'll be doing fine.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, I think not strictly necessary, but probably the most accurate way. I mean, the important thing is to stay active, isn't it, in these kind of positions?
Yeah. Yeah, and this queen's active.
Which is very active now because she's threatening some, sort of opening up the possibility of queen c1 check or something as well. So queen f3, okay. Yeah. Right, okay. And now so it feels like black's pieces are probably centralized.
Change. But how is this if you did?
Wait a minute. A question. Yeah. I assume that if black plays knight takes d4, white must be going queen takes d5 check, because otherwise knight takes d4 would be a good move, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Okay. So knight takes d4. So obviously, if queen takes, and we've got this check.
Yeah. Well, that was lucky. I hadn't seen that. No, I hadn't actually. I'd seen
that. So queen here.
Yes. And this is probably a very good reason not to go knight takes. Oh, I don't know. Bishop e6.
Bishop e6. Queen takes.
But maybe
you put the queenie there.
Probably queen check and bishop takes. Maybe slightly more likely.
Yeah. Okay. So queen check.
Yeah.
Here. Bishop d4. Are there any checks? You could go bishop b3.
Yeah. More to the point, can you go queen c1 check and queen back to f4 check and make a perpetual like that?
Yes.
Probably.
Well, you've got to look at king f2 as well if you want to stop that.
You have actually. But I'm guessing queen f4 check is going to be... Because we can also take on b3.
Yeah.
So, if white wants to start going king e1, king e2, that kind of thing, I'll probably not be that unhappy.
I think it's dangerous to do that.
I think that this also... Probably it's a choice of ways to draw, but...
Yeah.
Yeah. But knight takes d4 feels quite principled to me. But I suppose you have to calculate this all works, otherwise it could be, too clever by half, couldn't it?
Yeah. So here... So this one.
Bishop e6, I think, is important. Otherwise, white... Otherwise, I mean, I'm not sure. It may be that if he takes the bishop, you have knight e2 check and you draw that way. Actually...
Which one? So here?
Oh, no, sorry, you need bishop e6 because you need to be able to take back on b3 after queen takes d4 anyway. I mean, it's probably a drawn ending anyway, but you don't want to play it a pawn down for no reason.
No.
So check. Yeah, queen takes d4, takes, bishop takes b3. Bishop b6 just looks like an immediate dead draw. I mean, really dead.
That's really drawn.
Yeah. Queen d8 check, king h6.
Oh, wait. Stop. So here
takes.
And
bishop b3. I mean, black's even first to be attacking a pawn. So
here. There's nothing. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. I certainly believe that.
I'm confident I could draw this with either colour.
Yeah. Even
against anybody, and probably even any engine. This is really drawn.
Okay. All right. So queen d5, bishop e6, queen d8, king h7, and this one we think's drawn.
I think it is because... Yeah, I think it's probably drawn in two different ways. I mean, I just wanted to check that we were never getting a sort of bishop takes d4 followed by the queen attacking g7 in a nasty way. But I don't think it's going to be a very nasty way. So.
No, and black can check.
No, and black has the checks anyway. So this looks like another cast. But I suspect queen takes f3 is pretty cast iron as well, actually. So
yeah. The queen takes. Knight takes.
And I'm guessing that b5 is the way to liquidate the things most efficiently.
Takes. Knight d4.
Okay, knight d4 is sort of like another way of offering a draw, isn't it? Because after takes bishop d3, I think we're getting a similar ending to what we just talked about. So.
Yeah, so takes, a4 takes.
Oh, sorry, a4 even more direct. Yes, of course, a4 white has to take, otherwise the a pawn might actually become very strong. And that's, Okay.
All right, so a solid game there. So a few interesting.
I mean, you're going to in a match between evenly matched players who are playing reasonably solid openings, you're going to get some games like that. And actually, I think we were very lucky that the first two encounters were so incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
I don't think and I also think that's a very sensible game from Mickey after having lost yesterday, because, as I said, the important thing is not to get trapped in the successive losses machine, as it's sometimes known. And I think this was a really very efficient equalizing performance. And he gets the white pieces tomorrow, and things didn't go well yesterday, but he did get some. I thought his opening was a bit strange, but he got some edge as white. So
what do you think tomorrow? Do you think they'll repeat pretty much the opening from yesterday?
I've no idea. Do you want to just very quickly see what happened?
Just a quick look at yesterday's opening.
Because it was, I haven't looked at it in much detail, but the openings, you don't need to look at it in detail for it to be quite strikingly. It's very modern.
Yeah. Let's see. So it's another e4.
Yeah.
Okay, and we've got
one of those openings where you see moves that you don't think would have really been played by anyone before engines, because they would have just thought it looked odd. But if you look at the position on move, let's get there. But the strange-looking move Mickey makes is the engine's top choice, I think. So bishop b5 check, and this is odd because you feel like bishop b5 check is played to avoid open Sicilians in a sense, but then white goes and plays queen takes d4 is still the most popular move here by quite a long way, but it's also very well explored, and I guess knight takes much less so. Queen takes sort of makes sense if you're trying to set up a Moxie bind type thing with c4. If you're going to get rid of that bishop on d7, possibly it makes sense to take with the queen. It sort of accelerates development in a sense. But what Mickey did just looked slightly bizarre, but if you think about it, there is a point, as there usually is.
Right. Is that a quiz question? Think about the point. It can go into f5. It keeps the bishop defended, and it lets f4 come in quickly as well.
No, I think it's more a question of why does bishop b5, knight d7 help white? Because that's, without bishop b5, knight d7, this is just a mainline open Sicilian, isn't it? So the question is, why is bishop b5, knight d7 possibly a useful thing for white to have thrown in? And when black goes knight f6 here, how can it make sense to retreat that bishop immediately? That's the question. It's a strange thing.
Well, I suppose we prefer their knight being on d7 because their bishop's a bit blocked.
That's sort of true, but if you think about the Najdorf, it goes to d7 an awful lot of the time in the Najdorf, and in a sense, that's the opening I think Mickey's trying to avoid with this line. So,
yes. But I think our question is really why? Yeah, why do we prefer this here than there?
Yeah, but after knight f6 specifically, white goes bishop d3.
Bishop d3. Okay.
Why is it worth going bishop b5 check back to d3? I guess is the question. So bishop d3, to my surprise, is the engine's top move after knight f6. And
are we going to set up this structure again? We're not. No.
Possibly, but black can, for example, go knight c5 right now, if as I think he did, as people have, and then c4 is not an option anymore. So there were two things I was trying to work with. I was thinking, again, if you play the Najdorf with bishop d3, then probably e5 makes a lot of sense. And if you're going to play e5, you don't want your knight on d7, because you might want the option of playing d5 for black or taking on f5 if the knight goes there, that kind of thing. But the other thing is, maybe in bishop d3 positions, the move knight c6 comes into its own if it's still on b8, and maybe it's slightly awkward that it's on d7 in some sense.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look bad to me the way the game went for black. By the way, the one thing which did make sense for me in these positions is if black plays knight c5 and takes on d3, I feel quite strongly that usually white should take back with the pawn rather than the queen.
Okay.
But then I saw quite a lot of games where white took back on with the queen in these positions, and then I sort of gave up trying to work it out. I thought, I simply don't understand if people are taking back.
When you do the Maroczy bind positions, you don't mind them taking too much sometimes, do you?
Well, I mean, you often see Maroczy binds where whites exchange the light squared bishop for a bishop. But if they exchange it for a knight, yeah, it could work well, or it could lead to a situation where black gets a pawn break more easily with b5 or bishop e6 attacking c4 or something. I don't know. It's difficult to judge. But anyway, with the knight on attacking the e-pawn, white goes knight c3 anyway, so the Maroczy bind sort of goes out the window.
No, yeah.
But then, okay, then Andrei plays it kind of like a dragon, and
castle, bishop g7,
yeah,
key1, castles, bishop f1.
Yeah, so now white's keeping it.
Yeah.
This feels like a position that, I don't know, if there's anything wrong with black's position, it must be that the knight's on c5 rather than c6, so it's not pressuring d4. Because I'm pretty sure if you got this position with the knight on c6, okay, there are various quirky little lines of the dragon where white avoids the big theory these days, and there are some claims that it leads to a tiny edge, but this one doesn't look very scary to me. But black has to somehow make sense of the position with that knight on c5, and I think Mickey was doing well for a while, or reasonably well. I mean, I don't think it's scary for black at all at the moment, but it's a position white can play. And of course, a lot of the time, what they're looking for these days is just something new, because some of the theory goes so deep that if you can find a playable position that's new, that's already seen as a success, you know. But do you agree with me? This doesn't feel terribly scary for black, does it, on the face of it?
Yeah, I agree.
You sort of think black ought to be trying to play something with e5 and then d5 straight away as one way to free up the position. But I think one thing we've discovered in recent years is that some of those freeing moves aren't as great as we thought. Because white hasn't done anything terribly committal on the... When people start to do very committal things, then if you break in the centre, it's usually more exciting. But if they haven't done anything committal or anti-positional, then... Okay, then you may just end up with a position where you'd rather not have the pawn on e5 or something. Anyway, let's see what happened the next few minutes, because it sort of developed quite quickly from here.
Oh, okay. He's going to try and swap off the dark square bishops here.
Yeah. Although it wasn't clear to me that black couldn't have allowed that. But I can see there's always an argument for keeping that bishop if you can. But this is an interesting moment now, because I think black is doing this, playing e5 and d5 idea, and I'm sure black had seen that the knight can go to f5 and decided that the d5 break works perfectly well with it on f5 as well. You know, it can be broadly ignored. But I'm also interested in knight b3 with the idea that, you know, if black takes, I quite like opening the c file. If black's going to play d5, I wouldn't mind sort of playing takes, rook c1 or something. I don't know exactly the order, but it feels to me like white may have a little nibble around here. And b6 can be a little bit weak if that knight becomes exchanged. You know, you can sort of flick your bishop back to e3 at the right moment and attack b6, and that it may not be the end of the world for black, but it's another thing to think about, isn't it? So... And I guess that if it's white to move in a position like that, you look at bishop g5 as well to hold back d5 and threaten queen h4 or whatever. So there are ideas for white around here. Knight f5 looks very tempting, but might be a bit committal as well.
Yeah, so this one got... I was going to say got ignored. I don't know about that, but it like...
Well, I think it reasonably needs to be ignored. I think if you take it queen g3, okay, you've got knight g4 is legal, but it looks very scary.
Yeah. So take.
Yeah.
queen h4. So Mickey's going for the attack.
He's not threatening knight takes e7, knight takes d5 and knight e7 winning immediately. So there's clearly a scary element to this.
Yeah, and still, if this, just to point out, still if this, then we've got this.
Even more devastating than before, yeah.
Yeah. But okay, so Andrei just says, okay.
Yeah, so the knight, I mean, the important thing is the knight's defended twice on d5, so there's no overload going on here. Bishop takes d5 works fine.
Yep, and that all happened.
What happens to rook d1 here, just out of interest?
Before, here.
Yeah.
That.
With the idea that you can't take on c3, because then I take on d7 and I still have the knight e7 check.
Yeah.
That is true, isn't it?
Yeah.
It looks true.
It's true.
I'm wondering if I have seen the answer to my own question. Maybe black can play. No, that's not an answer. Okay, what happens here?
So in this position, it's black to play. Queen f6.
Sorry, queen f6.
Oh, sorry, bishop f6 hitting the queen.
No, that's what I was. But then knight takes d5 is a bit awkward, to say the least, because we're going to hit things. After bishop takes h4, we take c7, and I think
takes.
Oh wait, then you take e1. Maybe that works. No, that can't work. We've got knight takes, rook takes d7, then and knight e7 check, and knight takes a8.
We have to take here.
Oh, then I take on h4. No, you have to try bishop takes e1, I think.
Oh. Bishop takes e1.
And now you're attacking my rook, so I better take on d7, I think.
Yes.
Takes.
Have to take.
Okay, but I have knight e7 check. I can't believe this is what black was intending. I mean, at the very least, I can take on a8 and then win a pawn on a6. And there may be better things, but this looks off-putting for black.
Where's the knight?
Well, I was just thinking about that. But if you go something like bishop h4, at the very least, I can hit the knight on d7 with bishop b5, thereby creating some squares for it. But it can also go to d8, c8, sorry, and then to d6 with bishop c4 coming might be quite annoying for f7. I think white's just doing well here.
So white's doing well in that.
I believe so. I mean, it's a fairly quick look, but I think so. Just wondered about rook d1. I mean, it just occurred to me then. I hadn't.
So you could.
It may be the simple move like f6. Maybe just f6 actually deals with some stuff. Oh no, then bishop c4. No, I don't want to play f6. So queen d8 might be a good idea. No, there's queen d8 and takes on d5, and there's still mate on e7 at the end or something.
Oh.
I don't know. It's not. I mean, takes knight takes d5. You can play g takes f5. Oh no, then knight e7 mates anyway. What am I on about? Sorry, I meant bishop takes d5, rook takes, and then take on g5. Whatever. I know what I mean. I'm losing the plot, but I think
here
this also doesn't feel like something black would voluntarily go into. I don't think. So
then,
well, it's not that terrible, maybe. No, but rook takes d7 and maybe again b4 and bishop takes a6. I'm not sure this position's that unclear, but it's it's a long forcing line that you need to work, which is always a bit.
You have to work it out, but then you can take here, can't you?
Yeah, bishop a6 and I don't know. It's a beautifully random piece of analysis.
There's
very little relation to, but I suspect that white's. At least this position's worth exploring for white, I would have thought. Bishop c8 is a nice threat. Just to win f5, yeah. Then the king, if you can win the f5 pawn, there's no more e4 pawn breaks and stuff. Then it feels like the stuff around black's king might be quite annoying. No? I can threaten to go rook e4 to g4 mate or something.
Okay.
I don't know. It's a bit hard to believe that line was close to the truth, but it's. I just wondered about rook d1. Anyway, white took and
bishop takes, and then rook d1.
Oh, okay. Maybe there's some sort. But doesn't that allow? No, I'm not sure what that allows. What did black play?
Played rook e8.
Oh, that's a nice move, which wasn't. Was that that wasn't possible in the other, or was that possible anyway? Maybe that was possible.
Been possible.
Maybe we should have looked, and that was the answer to the question, perhaps.
Yeah, could
Sorry, we'd have missed out on that wonderful, irrelevant analysis if we'd looked ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, that looks like a very sensible, solid move.
Yeah. So knight e3.
Yeah.
Bishop e6. And this came off.
Yes. I mean, I still think white's doing fine, but you can sort of see the sort of origins of what I was talking about, where things start to look like white's got a little bit too committed to the attack and things are slightly offside for when black has some counterplay. I mean, at the moment, I think it all holds together fine, but it doesn't perhaps take that much for it not to.
Kind of. I still want to do, you know, like this thing you were talking about before with b4 and take on a6.
Oh, you're thinking about that now?
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of. There was a downside to b4 because it does weaken a lot of squares, but yes. I guess that I can take on a4 and put the knight in on c3, then stopping bishop b5, and I think that that's a square I want to have anyway. So.
Yeah. Okay, so Mickey's a bit more solid than that.
Yeah, that's a very solid way to do it.
Bishop g7. Yeah, h5.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure whether I'm now using the fact that I've looked ahead because I probably wouldn't have. But I'm wondering whether this is actually a slight mistake in that if it gives black a tempo for b5 in a moment without any unpleasant consequences, this felt a bit like the moment where black starts taking over the initiative. But I'm not entirely sure what white's best plan was. I don't know. It's
you could put the bishop on c4, I suppose.
Yeah, that feels like a relatively solid way of doing it. Yeah, I did wonder about that one. Although, the queen defends c4, so there's no tricks with knight takes a4 or anything. I suspect that might be the move Mickey missed. It's a lovely way to cover d6, and then suddenly you get the feeling that if there isn't another reason for knight c4, that might be what white will live to regret. Isn't that nice? That's a beautiful move, just covering d6 and threatening b5, and you sort of think, maybe knight d4 wasn't leading anywhere.
Yeah. King h1. b5 takes knight e3.
And you see now there may be a threat of f6 because the bishop's defending the knight, and suddenly white's pieces start to look. Yeah, that bishop actually doesn't have so many squares now, and you start to wonder whether things are a little overextended.
It's true. Things are defending other things, aren't they? So this knight.
Yeah, that's always a bit of a worry.
Defending this.
I wonder whether white should have gone queen e1 to be able to bring the bishop to h4 and f2 here. I don't know whether that's possible, but that looks like the sort of that you've got to really grasp the moment of knowing that you're worse, I guess. Maybe there's anyway the move e4 is going to be annoying as soon as the queen's not defending the bishop. Yeah, white's just lost coordination suddenly, and I think it was knight c4 that was to blame.
So we've got b4.
Okay, that may be a necessary preparation for whatever he does next. Because at least, he did go queen e1, because at least the queen isn't now attacking the bishop along the fourth rank for black. But so if white can, he would want to go bishop h4 to f2 to regroup stuff, I think. But that having to play b4 has a downside. That c4 square is now a target for black as well. So
and black tries to.
Okay, so I think that Mickey is clearly defending now.
c3.
Yeah. Now in this position, if white could exchange dark squared bishops, I think I'd be perfectly happy for him. But as it is, I don't think the bishop has got anywhere very obvious to go, and it heads off in an unlikely looking direction.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it looks attractive because you're trying to, I guess he's trying to put it on a square where it's kind of defended and stable. But I think it rather cedes the centre to black, who can now look at breaks in the centre.
Does it straight away? E4.
Yeah, I think, that's the problem, is that moves like queen e5 are now tempting for black. And that's a nice, I don't know again whether Mickey had a better move than f4, but this does seem to, black's basically winning a pawn now because the bishop's struggling to defend f4 anymore. After queen d8, b8, I suppose that the bishop is not yet threatened, but probably bishop takes c3 is threatened. Is that right?
You don't feel like leaving it there for too long, do you?
Yeah, I don't want to leave it there too long. But if you could, I mean, you don't want to play g3 either because black's got all these white squares. But I just wonder, from the point of view of losing material, whether you could go, or even, you can't go queen d6 because c3 hangs. So there's no easy way out of this. The queen's going to be at least overloaded. Yeah, okay. Really tough. So bishop, and now he tries to give a pawn. Well, he tries to give the pawn in a way that messes up the structure. But you could argue, okay, it stops the bishop on g7 from entering the play so quickly. But those pawns are going to roll anyway, aren't they? You could sort of.
Yeah, it's been this bishop. This bishop has.
Yeah, during this part of the game, that's been the problem. And now these pawns are pretty fast in the centre, I think.
He gets back this f pawn.
Well, but I think e3 is coming, basically, is going to cause a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So there's a check on g6 threatened, so black goes queen, bishop f5. And now I suspect there's no way to avoid losing the piece anymore. Yeah. So Mickey finds the
queen c4. Does that hold on to it?
No, because there's an e2 move, which is going to cause
e2 at the end.
Yeah, so okay, it's not yet obvious because the bishop defends e1 as well as the rook, but I think it's just a matter of the back rank. The back rank is going to count
because you have to, you have to have.
You're just going to go rook d8 in the back rank.
Yeah.
I mean, I think after rook f3 you could also play bishop g4, but takes or just sorry, not takes. Rook d8 is just obviously a very unpleasant move to meet.
Can't you just queen the pawn?
Oh, now?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then I can take and go rook f1, and I'm winning a third pawn on f6.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you want to allow me even that much counterplay anymore.
No, true. Okay,
so you can get there for
this is a good this move here. Then rook d8 is a good kind of.
Yeah, it's a nice move, but
like intermediate move before queening.
Well, in a sense, e2 is an intermediate move too. It's just a fairly standard one. But rook d8, well, I mean, the number of times you have a pass pawn on the 7th and you move the rook to the adjacent file where it supports it is it's very strong. And once you get, well, I think white has to go h3, and then the queen on f4 is being immobilized by the pin as well, which prevents any kind of tricks and counterplays.
Yeah, this is it. Then
it's obviously handy for black here that the queen is also pinned against h2, so there's no sort of monkey business occurring. King f7 is very calm. That's the sort of move I associate with Mickey when he's the other colour in this position. That's a very Mickey move. Which is
King g3. Okay, and
that doesn't help because h4 check. Well, you obviously can't take because of rook e4, and so it's a useful tempo move for black anyway.
Yeah.
And king g6 is also a very Mickey move.
It's an Andrei move. Yeah,
it is now also an Andrei move, and well, you can see that it's 2 pawns, but there's no way of really preventing them from dropping off, I think.
Yeah.
And the thing about king g6, it's preparing to make sure that the h pawn doesn't drop off in return.
So what do you think of Andrei's style so far in this match? He's in the lead.
Well, I mean, this was a very good kind of, you soak up a little bit of pressure and then you counter punch. But in a sense, that's, part of me kind of has this vague feeling that that's somehow easier to do in the Sicilian than it is in e4, e5. But Mickey showed in round 1 that it doesn't take that many inaccuracies by white that you can start counterpunching in the Italian as well. You know, what Mickey did today was very clean equalization, but what he did in round 1, that's when Andrei was a bit more ambitious, there was that scope for counterpunching as well. So both of them have counterpunched very well with black so far.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate for Mickey that Andrei's counterpunch in this game led to a full point, whereas Mickey's counterpunch in round 1 didn't quite make it. But, you know, in a sense, those two games had that similar element of the black player soaks up a little bit of initiative, and then when they get their chance, they push quite hard. And Mickey pushed really hard in game 1, if you remember. We were sort of quite excited about his position after the exchange stack sometimes. Yeah. And so I think, you know, we've had one rather solid draw and 2 games in which white's exerted a little bit of pressure and black has fought back really well. So, you know, that when you do that, sometimes you get the full point, sometimes you don't. But I think Andrei's style has been is kind of very rational too. And the Sicilian, you know, the possibility.
Quite a similar style in some ways, I'm thinking.
Well, perhaps, but playing the Najdorf gives you a little bit of extra counter-punching edge sometimes if Mickey allows that. And of course, I think a lot will depend on whether either Mickey decides tomorrow if he's a point down. I mean, Mickey's quite capable of playing the white side of open Sicilians as well. He may decide to give that a go. Yeah, he may have seen where he got with Bishop B5 check, and then if that doesn't work, give the opener. I'm sure he's quite capable of doing that. Or he may.
Does he do the closed? Maybe he's closed.
I think he certainly has done. I think I remember him playing the closed against Garry Kasparov, which is you've got to play it properly if you're going to do it against Garry Kasparov. So yeah, in fact, I think back then when I was seconding him, he did some closed Sicilians, including that one against Gaza. So yes, but I don't.
You might rule out
I'm not aware of him having done it in recent years.
Yeah, you might rule out some of your opening prep tomorrow, then, Peter. You never know.
I think that's highly unlikely. It's kind of nearly 20 years old. I mean, I'm very haunted by what Niels Grandelius said a couple of years ago, where he basically said he discounts almost all of his opening preparation that was done for 2019. Such is the impact of engines that he said almost anything from sort of 4 years ago is now just feels outdated.
Obsolete. Yeah.
And that's the most depressing take on the impact of engines on preparation I've heard. But I've heard sort of similar mild versions of that. So if Mickey wheels out something we did more than 20 years ago, or even, around 20 years ago, I'm going to be quite delighted and very surprised.
Okay, well, thank you, Peter, very much. We're going to be back tomorrow at 5:15. We also have Lanyao joining us tomorrow, so it's going to be very, very nice. And we're going to see some more of this thrilling match, actually, a strategic match, and great to see the games. Really interesting games here. And so tomorrow, Mickey's white, Andrei's black, Mickey's point behind, playing catch up. In this match, England against Ukraine. So please do join us tomorrow, and thanks everyone very much for watching.
Thanks for watching. Hope to see you tomorrow. Thanks. Blue Grey Haze.